Hello and welcome to today's episode of Talk the Talk, RTR-FM's weekly show about linguistics, the science of language. For the next hour, we're going to be bringing you language stories, language news, language tech, and some really great tracks. Maybe even hear from you. My name is Daniel Midgley. I'm here with Rianne Toddhunter. Hey, Rianne, how's it going?
Hello. It's real lovely to be back and doing this with you. It's been a long time since we've shared a Talk the Talk together.
I know. It's good to be back here on this episode of Talk the Talk. And later on, we'll be talking to Ben Ainsley about whether you should be learning a second language and how to do it. So, Rianne, it's been a big week in linguistics. I noticed that a linguist won the Oscar for Best Actress.
I missed that, but please tell me.
Well, no, she's not really a linguist. It's Julianne Moore in Still Alice. But still, someone playing a linguist.
And well, that counts, doesn't it?
I think so.
We'll claim that. That's fine.
So we're into communication around here and how ideas get communicated through language. And I think you've got a story for me about this. What's the story?
Absolutely. Well, our story this week comes from a website called Slate.
Oh, yes.
And I think a good way to preface it is that there's a quote that's been doing the rounds on the internet for a while, which goes along the lines of, you can't believe everything you read on the internet, and that is allocated to Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
So kind of having a dig at itself.
83% of all internet statistics are made up on the spot.
Absolutely. If you do have Facebook, which I think most people do now, it's probably, you've been noticing as well recently that there's a lot more of what people call clickbait, things like The Secret Life of Superheroes and parents that have mastered the art of trolling. Those are two that I found on my newsfeed this morning.
Oh, great.
When I was preparing for this. And also news articles, and you can't see me, but I'm doing the inverted commas.
Oh, right.
News articles that some are a great deal more outlandish than others. So last week, Facebook announced that it would be changing its newsfeed software to allow the flagging of news stories that could be interpreted as hoaxes or untrue.
Oh, thank goodness.
Or things like that.
Well, can you give me an example here? What counts as a hoax?
I guess stories that,
I can think of a lot of things that I think are hoaxes.
Okay.
Because,
go ahead.
When it comes to putting the kibosh on internet hoaxes, I am that guy.
What have you come across recently?
Lots of stuff. Anti-vaxxers, a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'm always, pointing out stuff about that. Climate deniers, moon hoaxers, which you don't see so much anymore. Alt-med quackery, I'm right there. Oh, I should do this. All opinions of those of Daniel Midgley, not necessarily those of RTR-FM, Arts Radio, or Peter Barr. So I know people who email these things around. In fact, one of my special family members, she would send these things, and I would patiently link to Snopes and remind her that, you can check these things out on, Snopes, right?
I do. Yeah, it's a website that debunks hoaxes and things like that on the internet.
And I would remind her that she could check it out. So then she improved a bit. She would only send something on if the email itself said that it had been verified by Snopes.
Okay.
Which wasn't...
Not quite the same thing,
no.
but it's close.
So how do you know?
It's getting better.
It's getting better. So how do you know as a human when something is a hoax?
Generally, I think it's very reliant on common sense, which isn't always incredibly accurate.
Oh, no.
And the general way that you form ideas about most things, context, previous experience. But if you're on something like Facebook or Twitter or any other social networking site, and you're presented with information that in itself is presented as news, it comes from a news website,
right.
How are you meant to know which one you do and which one you don't trust? I
tend to be pretty patched into the skeptical community because I identify as a skeptic. And so, that people talk about hoaxes and nonsense and the evidence for this and that view. And I've changed my mind on some things, recently. So, for example, I used to think that vitamins were a good idea. But since then, I've seen a lot of evidence that vitamins aren't actually that helpful unless you are someone who really needs them. You have a specific, but just general taking vitamins, that I would count as kind of a hoax. So what's Facebook doing about this? Well,
what they're doing to kind of combat this is allowing, when you find content on Facebook that you don't necessarily agree with for some reason, like it's nudity or it's hate speech or it's, a really bad photo of yourself at that party last weekend.
Yep. They see nudity.
Yeah, yep. They have options that you can go in and ask Facebook to take this down or flag it for some particular reason. And they've added a new category onto that now, which says, I believe that this thing is not true. It's you know, this is a hoax, this article contains information which isn't, you know, strictly citable.
So basically they're crowdsourcing.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not using software that actually goes in and verifies the truth.
Okay.
They're using people that go in and use the human element to figure out whether it's true or not. And then the only thing that they really do about it is to put a little note at the top of the article to say that most people believe that this is not true, or many people have said that this is not necessarily true.
I actually like that. I think that could be useful. Although, you know, crowdsourcing is a bit of a circular thing because crowdsourcing assumes that people know what a hoax is. And if people knew what a hoax was, there wouldn't be a problem.
I think there's going to be problems as well for sites like The Onion, for example, which are satirical, like in their essence. They're satirical for the point of being satirical, and are there going to be people who just don't get that?
And The Shovel and The Un-Australian are great for that kind of thing. But then there are lots of hoaxes like the long-running Morgan Freeman is dead hoax. You know, he's been dying for, well, haven't we all?
We're all dying, Daniel.
Okay, fine. But it would be good to be able to click a button and say, yeah, that's not true. I noticed, I checked out the article as well, and if someone, Facebook is also using this, if a comment says, like somebody publishes a story, and then the next person who comments says hoax or debunked in it, then that might actually be a good indicator that it's not true. And also, if someone deletes their own post, Facebook is checking on that as well. And that's good because
that's a fairly good indication,
because
I think.
People are so embarrassed that they delete their own stuff. One thing I think it's important to do is keep up with issues and stay skeptical. A lot of really bad ideas get believed because they're supported by entire communities.
And if you keep seeing the same story come up over and over and over again, then you're going to be a little more inclined to believe that it's true.
Exactly.
I feel like as well when I was going through and trying to find really terrible clickbait articles, that there is just so much news coming up on my Facebook now. It is a news feed, I know that, but there are so many articles that are kind of just blur over them all now. And things that are in there, you can read the headline and you take it in and you don't necessarily explore further. So there's so much information that may not necessarily be true, but it's kind of just worming its way in there anyway.
You know, there have been some psychological experiments where I believe Stephen Lewandowski is at UWA is in charge of this kind of thing. Some really interesting stuff where they gave people wrong information and then they tried to correct it. And most people were able to update, but certain people actually believed the wrong information more. Correcting it made it worse. And that's a problem. I worry if Facebook will become a series of battles between ideological communities, all reporting each other. But I guess the important thing is to make sure that you're keeping up with issues and staying skeptical, which for me means keeping an open mind, finding out where the evidence lies, and being willing to change your mind. Facts over ideology for the win.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Should we take a track?
Yeah. What do we got?
I got some Doctopus here, one of our fine local establishments. And this is Man, I Think You're Cool on RTR-FM 92.1.
Man, I think you're so damn cool. I thought you were invincible, but when you said that shit, all insecure, oh dude, it's so because I think you're cool.
Doctopus.
Ting!
Sorry, guys. Doctopus there with Man, I Think You're Cool from their album Wobbegong. You know what I love about their live show? It's so understated and so laid back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally get that from the recordings.
You're here on Talk the Talk with me, Daniel Midgley, and Rhiannon Todd Hunter. Rhiannon, tell me about your language learning experience. Have you ever learned a language?
Oh, not in a very adequate capacity.
Oh,
No.
I see. Was it like in high school like everybody else?
Yeah, I learned Italian for most of primary school and high school. I also did a year of Bahasa Indonesia,
Wow.
which they were the two languages that we could learn at my high school. And learning Bahasa became really, really useful when I then went to Malaysia a few years ago. And the few words that I could remember were the same in both languages.
Nice.
So there are a few differences between the languages, but majority of them is kind of the same. Like you could speak Indonesian and be relatively well understood in Malaysian. Well, that's my understanding of it, at
No.
least. Nobody told me that I was doing it wrong.
Well, they wouldn't tell you, would they? I mean, it's hard to correct adults. Everyone corrects children, but nobody corrects adults.
I've been corrected quite a few times,
okay.
especially like in some European countries as well. Like my incredibly like mediocre handful of French, and then my slightly bigger couple of handfuls of Italian came in really handy when I was traveling there, because I think you do get into the habit a little bit more when you're in the country, and it's a lot easier to remember the things that you forgot 10 years ago. But I was still getting corrected.
I'm guessing that being there made it easier than, learning in a classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. Having to do it and not just doing it for 2 hours a week and then going away and forgetting it all. And you have to still like get directions and go to the shops and, get all the things that you need. So it becomes necessity as opposed to getting a decent grade at the end of the year.
Have you ever thought of learning a language on like Duolingo or a similar website?
I started doing that again.
Did you?
Yeah. I think just before I went to Italy, I went on to Duolingo and started like relearning things, and then it wasn't consistent. I wasn't going back to it every day, and so again it became a little bit harder, but the intention was there.
That's good.
My intentions are good. That's all that matters, right?
I noticed on my latest app update that, Duolingo is in English, but you can also make it so that it is in French, so that French is the language that it operates on. And the latest app update tells me that they've added Italian for the French language version of the site. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start learning Italian
Yeah.
in French.
Yeah.
That's how badass I am.
Yeah, do it. Do you speak French anyway?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. Badly. Terribly.
But enough to be able to use Duolingo?
As the cartoon says, I speak mediocre French slowly.
Okay.
How about that?
That works.
Now, I had a bit of a chat about bilingualism with Ben Ainsley because there's a bit of a controversy lately about whether it is really that good. I mean, we've had on the show a lot of things about how it's great for you, good for your brain, but maybe those gains are overstated. So I had a bit of a chat with him, and here's how that went down. Now remember, if you have any comments about what you hear, you can always get them to us. We might even read them out on the air. How can they reach us?
They can call us on
Yes.
92609210. You can send us an email at studio@rtrfm.com.au or send us a tweet at rtrfm.
Or you can even hit us on Twitter, where Talk the Talk specifically is on @TalkRTR. We've also got a Facebook page. I'm going to be checking it. And so here's the chat that I had with Ben.
Speaking another language is good for your brain. At least that's what we've heard. But some new research paints a less positive picture. Should you learn another language? And how? Linguist Daniel Midgley gets bilingual on this episode of Talk the Talk. Word. I like bilingual.
You can't say bilingual. It's
Why
not
can't I say bilingual?
Well, you can say that if you like to.
I like to put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Oh, that was a dad joke.
Hey!
Now that you're a dad, I'm glad that you're getting in the program. You got to just, bust these things out. You got to see the ambulance screaming down the street and just say without thinking, you're not going to sell many ice creams going that fast.
Oh my God.
Get used to it, buddy.
That is so many years of bad joking before I can exist at that kind of level, Sensei.
It'll take time, but you'll get there.
Well, I look forward to my eventual comedic demise. Well, Daniel, it's been a week since you and I sat astride the desk, stared deeply into one another's eyes, and I said to you, Daniel, what's in the news?
It's not what's in the news, but what's on the news.
Mm-hmm.
Te reo. also known as Maori.
Aha.
Yeah. By the way, guess what te reo means, literally? It's what
Fearsome war speak.
No.
Oh, okay.
It means language.
Oh, right.
Like a lot of languages, the word for their language just means language or speaking.
Fair enough.
So this story concerns a weather presenter on New Zealand's TV3. Her name is Kanoa Lloyd, and she likes to use Maori words in her broadcast.
Cool.
Yeah. She likes to call New Zealand Aotearoa. She likes to refer to North and South Island as Te Ika a Maui and Te We Ponamu. And she says kia ora to everyone.
That's lovely.
It is, but it's prompted some complaints from some listeners.
Boo. Well, the strange thing about that is the station is explicitly supporting this person doing this thing. Otherwise, she wouldn't be on the air.
Yes. The TV station is supportive, thank goodness. And also, she points out via tweets on her Twitter feed that 99% of what I'm hearing, she says, is really positive and beautiful. It's awesome. We're all keen to protect this taonga.
Language.
Cultural treasure, I believe is the term. Te reo. So I got curious about this, and I decided to find out a little bit more about Maori and have a little Maori focus.
Oh, can I hum a theme song like Languages Around the World?
Let's do it.
Boom, boom,
Languages around the world. Coming at you on RTR.
This episode, Maori.
Here are some interesting things about Maori. You know how we have singular and plural pronouns?
Yes.
Like there's I and then there's we.
Yes.
Well, Maori has 3, singular, dual, and plural.
Ah, cool.
So if there's me, there's one word. And if there's 2 of us, there's another word. And if there's 3 or more, then there's another one.
Huh.
And
That's pretty cool.
Not only that, it has inclusive and exclusive we. So if I say we are going to the movies, inclusive, that means you and the rest of us.
Right.
But if I say we are going to the movies, exclusively, that means us and not you.
Oh, burn! Maori has a structural language capacity for exclusion burn.
It's actually pretty common around the world's languages.
Yeah, right.
Like a lot of languages, you can have sentences without a verb.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to say, that is the cat, ko te ngerutera, but what you're really saying is that cat.
Right. Cool.
And most interestingly, it's got VSO syntax. Yep, verb, subject, and then object.
Classic.
But what really caught my attention is that the tense marker, you know how we have like an ED that we stick on past tense verbs?
Yes.
And that comes at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, in Maori sentences, the tense marker comes right up front.
Like of the sentence itself.
Exactly.
Wow.
So if you wanted to say, for example, I went, you would say I, and I is past. I hare au. So you would say past go I. Whereas if you're saying the future, you would say ka haere au, which means I will go, and that would be literally future go I.
That's I kind of like that. Like that's just putting your big things up front. You're like, okay, we're in the past. Now I'm going to tell you a sentence. Oh, no, we're talking about future things. Now I'm going to tell you information.
Hey, wait a minute. Does that mean like that they're really good at figuring out when things are happening?
Their temporal awareness is so developed because they speak in past and future. Shut up, Wharfing douchebag.
Exactly. Let's just keep a lid on that. Anyway, I found a list of web resources for Maori. If you're more curious about it, then you can head to the link on our blog, www.talkthetalkpodcast.com. And a big kia ora to Kanoa Lloyd and TV3. Keep fighting the good fight.
And that has been your
Language Minute on RTR.
FM.
Da-da.
Well, why don't we play some actual music now that we've butchered the ears of everyone who's listening?
We will try Lemon Jelly with Nice Weather for Ducks.
You're on RTR FM 92.1, The Sound Alternative. Ben and Daniel with you for Talk the Talk, and we'll be back with more linguistics right after this.
And that's Lemon Jelly there with Nice Weather for Ducks on RTR FM 92.1.
There's a couple of things in this world that I regret, Daniel.
What do you regret?
One of the things is that I just feel like my zombie apocalypse plan will never actually get a chance to be put into action because zombies are not real.
Well, you've got to have a dream.
I know. Another one of my regrets, I never learned another language.
You know, it's funny you should say that. Because Bill Gates said the exact same thing.
Wow. That basically makes me just like Bill Gates.
Except not nearly as wealthy.
But spiritually quite wealthy.
Much more, sexually magnetistic.
Wow. Yep.
He says in his Reddit Ask Me Anything that he did, he likes to do these things. He says, I feel pretty stupid that I don't know any foreign languages. I took Latin and Greek in high school and got A's, and I guess it helps my vocabulary, but I wish I knew French or Arabic or Chinese. I keep hoping to get the time to study one of these, probably French because it is the easiest. I did Duolingo for a while, but didn't keep it up.
Well, there's another synergy between he and I.
We've talked before about the benefits of bilingualism on the show, People are better at making rational decisions when they're not using their native language. It staves off Alzheimer's disease, and bilingual children are better at multitasking.
Huh.
Great things.
Yeah.
On the other hand, is it really an advantage? I mean, nowadays, Skype can translate for us. This is a new thing.
Okay.
Facebook gives us a show translation link that we can click on. For years, people thought that bilingualism was really bad for children's brains.
Really?
Yeah.
How did they arrive at this conclusion?
How they arrived at it was they ignored the experience of nearly everyone in every other non-English speaking country, where speaking more than one language is a normal everyday thing.
Right.
They thought that it would delay the onset of speaking. It doesn't. They thought it would confuse children.
It does not.
You had to handle it very carefully with the one parent, one language method. You don't. And then people started to find evidence that it's actually really good for your brain thanks to the work of psychologist Ellen Bialystok, who showed that it helps something known as executive functions.
And now this is the part of your brain that is basically the boss at the top of the tower.
That's
He's
right.
the little man or woman or gender undefined human being,
Yes.
who is sitting up there just kind of going, yeah, that impulse to eat a whole bunch of donuts, maybe not today. Let's put that one on the back burner, okay? And you know what? A run is a really good idea. Like, that's if you've got a good executive
Yes.
function.
Handling your memory, handling attention and reasoning and task selection and things like that. So that came to be the prevailing view, that bilingualism was really good for your brain. Until recently.
Oh, no. Come on. We don't need research to say it's bad. We need more research to say it's good, but I want to hear the research anyway.
Well, there was a bit of a concern that maybe we want to hear too much the idea that it's really good for us.
And so then we just kind of self-fulfilling prophecy style just pursued data that would reinforce what we thought was a good idea?
Well, this is the idea presented by the magazine The New Yorker, which reports on the work of Angela de Bruin of the University of Edinburgh. She started doing some research on executive function, and when she got people into the labs, bilinguals and monolinguals, to see who was better, she didn't find much of a difference.
Okay.
Okay, so that was the starting point. Then she did some meta-analysis. She looked at conference papers, and she found that it ran about half and half.
Okay, so you,
Some good effect, some no effect, or negative effect.
okay, so you're still sort of in a not definitive juncture at this point, right?
But then she looked at journal articles and found that in the journals, the effects of bilingualism were mostly considered to be good.
Okay.
So she took from that the idea that maybe conferences are where the breaking research is, all the new stuff, whereas journals are much more stodgy.
Okay.
She thought that the journals were maybe trying too hard to present the positive side of bilingualism and burying the negative story.
Okay, because so her suggestion being there is some sort of institutional bias.
On the other hand, I'm not sure. There's another possibility. I mean, the conferences are where all the new hot stuff is going on, but some of that new stuff, when it gets further on down the track, might not stand up.
Right. So,
And
like
they disappear.
one of the aspects of the sort of quote unquote stodginess of a journal is that they ideally exercise a really rigorous set of standards about whether your stuff is good enough to get into their journal or not. And so if you meet those standards and you do the more complicated and more exhaustive research, you might end up finding that cool suggestive property that you identified in a conference turned out to be smoke.
Yep. But de Bruin still thinks that there is an effect, but maybe it's not as pronounced as all that.
But so far, all we've established is maybe not as good for us as we thought, outside of, knowing a whole other language, which in of itself is an advantageous thing.
So that being the case, let's see a bracket of recent work.
Okay.
This one was a bit of a clickbait title. Are you ready?
Oh, I do. I'm getting my grumpy pants on. I'm ready.
Learning a new language stimulates same pleasure centers in the brain as sex and chocolate.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Too much BS?
Daniel, if I had either sex or chocolate for every single time that I had heard someone claim that something excites the same pleasure centers in my brain that sex and chocolate does, I would be rolling in chocolate and sex.
Perhaps at the same time.
Everything in the known world, as far as I can tell, stimulates the same pleasure centers as chocolate and sex. Perhaps the pleasure center is just the one thing for all I know, because it's good. Good things make you go, woo!
I think that maybe you talking about this is stimulating the same pleasure centers in my brain as sex and chocolate.
Oh, my God. Okay, so tell me about the substance within.
Actually, it's not that far wrong. Researchers from the University of Barcelona and some others have done experiments with word learning, and they've put people in MRI machines and looked at where the activity was coming from. They found that there was a lot of activity in the ventral striatum, which is a part of the brain that seems to be involved in reward processing.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
And the article says that it's activated when people are involved in activities such as sex, drugs, gambling, or eating sugary foods. There's your chocolate.
Question.
Yes.
Do we not feel that perhaps the reward center of our brain is lighting up because every time that we do a thing, whether it's get a verb conjugation right or get a grammatical verb subject order correct, our brain goes, oh, I just succeeded at something that's quite hard.
I just did something good.
I guess what I'm saying is that it's not the longest bow to draw to see that the reward center of the brain lights up.
Hey, Ben.
Yes.
The Maori word for island is motu.
Motu.
How do you feel?
Yeah, that's nice.
That's all right.
I mean, I'm fundamentally a sociopath, so I feel very few emotions at the best of times anyway.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, I kid.
When we continue after this break, we'll find that there's even more research to go through involving language and brain. But shall we take a track?
I think so.
Let's hear Stina with Only Two.
You're on RTRFM 92.1. Talk the talk. We've got stacks more. Stick around.
That's Stina with Only Two on RTRFM 92.1.
What a wonderfully local, moody interlude. So, now that you've completely made me feel okay, A, about being just like Bill Gates, and B, not having learned another language, I think you need to back it up a little bit. We need more looking at in terms of why this is not good, apparently.
Well, I've got no bad news for bilingualism. I've only got good news.
Yes.
Here's the next one. This is the title from Eureka Alert. Learning a new language changes your brain network both structurally and functionally.
Not clickbait. Good title.
Of course your brain structure changes when you learn stuff. What else is going to change? Your pancreas?
Yeah, well, granted, but at least it's not like you'll never believe what happens when you learn another language.
This comes from Ping Li, professor of psychology at Penn State, and it's published in the Journal of Neurolinguistics. They took a look at people who were successful language learners and unsuccessful language learners and took a look at their brain network. You know that our brain is made up of cells and they're connected to each other, and that's how we learn stuff.
I thought it was just a series of tubes.
No, that's the internet.
Ah, of course.
But they found that the people who were language learners had really strong connections in terms of the strength and the direction of connections between the nodes of your brain. The stronger the links, the faster the nodes can work, and the network is more efficient.
So the neurons were just like vice grip style, holding onto each other.
Like a tangled forest. And they found that after the study period, when people had learned a language, the successful learners had densified their network. Their brains were better integrated, and that means
they got sexy ass brains.
the other thing was that it didn't matter what age this happened. The older learners were just as likely to show a densifying effect as the younger learners.
Which is very interesting because that's when you're really getting close to the body of research which suggests a kind of learning can help avoid the detrimental effects of dementia and Alzheimer's. That's fantastic.
Yeah, use it or lose it. Viorica Marian from Northwestern University, this is a study published in Brain and Language. She did the same kind of thing, looking at people using MRI imaging. And that's where you look at where the blood flow is going in the brain, and therefore we can infer some things about what parts of the brain are doing what.
Oh, totally the pleasure center where like sex and chocolate makes you go like, yeah, yay, woo!
They showed subjects 4 objects.
I hate it.
They would hear, for example, the word cloud, and then they would be shown 4 pictures, including a picture of a cloud, and then a picture of a word that was kind of similar, like clown.
Oh, okay.
Now, when that happens, you've got to sort of weed out the ones that are close but no cigar. You've got to do a little bit of repressing, right?
Yeah, right, okay.
You've got to find the thing that fits, but sort of inhibit the thing that doesn't fit.
Okay.
Now, this is one thing that if you're speaking another language, you've got to be really good at doing, because concepts will pop into your brain, and, you know, for me in English, I'm just associating words with concepts all day long. But in Spanish, for example, I've got to inhibit my English word, and I've got to I've got to promote my Spanish words.
Okay.
So inhibiting stuff and letting other stuff through is really part of the game when you're learning a language.
Yeah, right.
And so this study showed that people who do languages are really good at that executive function that we've been talking about.
Basically holding the little flag and going, yes, yes, no, 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 yes, 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 no, yep, no, no, yep.
And it's not just language that helps. For example, they found that bilingual children were better at ignoring classroom noise than children who speak one language.
That is really interesting. So the executive function that allowed the suppression and promotion of internal monologue also allowed for the suppression and promotion of external dialogue. Wow, that's really cool.
They also found that if you're good at inhibiting stuff that you don't want to hear, it could explain why bilingualism is so good at combating Alzheimer's, they think. Now, if you want to learn a language, how do you do it?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I want to know this information.
We've talked about Duolingo before.
We have, and I've used it for a while.
There's traditional language courses. I found a little interesting story here from John Ross Swaby at The Guardian, who suggests maybe singing might be a good idea.
Ooh.
He talks about his experience learning Portuguese, and he found that it was really hard to get a grip on, and nobody could really understand him until he started listening to and singing Portuguese songs.
So what's his idea here? Why does the singing help?
Oh, I've used singing in my classes as well in my life as an ESL teacher. It helps you to get the rhythm of the thing. It helps you to get the pronunciation.
The cadence and the stress and that sort of thing.
And for some reason, music, you know, I can recall things from Japanese classes when they used music that I only heard like once or twice.
Right, yeah, like little nursery rhymes and that sort of thing. I mean, I can still sing most of Frere Jacques, I'm pretty sure.
So I strongly recommend using music either if you're a teacher or if you're a student of a language. Get into it. You'll hear probably some very lifelike lyrics. Maybe a little too lifelike. And you'll get a sense of the way the language sounds.
Maybe save hip-hop for the more advanced classes, though.
if you go for hip-hop, you'll probably learn a lot of things.
Well, yeah.
Very quickly.
Very, very swiftly.
The vocabulary is out of this world.
Whoosh, if you can make out most of it.
Yeah.
Tune?
Yes. I thought we could try a track from Ryuichi Sakamoto and team. This is a little bit of Portuguese. It's O Amor em Paz on RTR FM 92.1.
Eu amei e amei de mim muito mais do que devia amar e chorei ao sentir que eu iria sofrer e me desesperar. Foi que da minha infinita tristeza aconteceu você e encontrei.
On RTR FM 92.1, that was Jacques Morellenbaum on cello, Paula Morellenbaum on vocals, Luis Brazil on guitar, and the ever-young Ryuichi Sakamoto on piano with O Amor en Paz.
We have arrived at the climactic fulcrum of Talk the Talk, which is, of course, Word of the Week.
I don't know if I can do the fulcrum after that. I'm too chilled out.
It was a lulling experience.
Oh, yeah. Last week was Oscars week, so this week's word is one that's often heard near the red carpet. Unrecognizable.
Unrecognizable. I feel like this isn't a new word.
It's not a new word, but I'm noticing it in a certain context.
Okay.
Uma Thurman hit the red carpet a while ago, looking a little different, and it reminded me of the flap with Renee Zellweger. This word often comes up when a celebrity's face changes to such an extent that their appearance seems to lack the characteristic facial features that we use to recognize them. Russell Brand, for his part, the comedian, has been fairly scathing of the Hollywood press on this issue. He points out that people age. And
What?
I know.
That's-
And actors, and especially actresses, are under tremendous pressure to look good even as they age. And that's pressure that the Hollywood press gleefully keeps up.
yes.
You know, I don't really worry about it too much because I think that we're unrecognizable, you and I.
I would think that there's a really significant portion of that unrecognizability is accountable to the radio side of things.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. I've got one to throw at you.
You've got a word of the week.
I've got a word of the week. Well, actually, I have a void.
A lexical semantic void?
I have a space in my heart where a word should be but isn't.
Okay, go ahead.
A friend of mine, before I came into the studio, texted me. She's at a wedding and she's sitting at a table full of ladies and they're all very drunk. And she texted me saying, "What is the male version of a mistress?"
Okay, the first thing that pops into my mind is gigolo.
See, but I would think that most people's understanding of gigolo means a male version of prostitute, someone for whom you pay for sexual congress.
Okay, that's not it. That's not it.
We're talking about a woman who is the sexual partner of a man
Yep.
who is married, and she is not the person to whom he is married. It is an extramarital lover of a man.
So what's the dude equivalent?
What is the dude equivalent of a guy who is having extramarital relations with a woman who is married, but not to the guy in question?
Reverse cuckold.
Reverse cuckold.
No.
But it's like inverse cuckold. It doesn't really work.
Yeah, you're right.
Paramour was the closest I've come so far.
That's good because, you know, it is... Well, is it male? All right.
No, here's the thing. The problems with Paramour that I have, not gender specific, so it fails on that test.
Yep.
And it's also not illicit specific. You can be a lover and be a paramour.
It gives me feelings of illicitry.
Now, I mean, there's things like toy boy, but that denotes a certain age, and there's things like lover, but again, that's not gender specific, and it's not illicit specific.
I don't think we have a word for this.
I think we do.
We do?
I think there's one that's just staring us right in the face, Daniel.
I'm not getting it.
Manstress.
Manstress. I love that because it uses the man prefix.
I'd love to claim that it is an original idea off the top of my head. It was one of those things of like, I wonder if that's a thing. And then I looked it up and it is a thing. Of course, Urban Dictionary, being the greatest repository of all of these sorts of words the world has to offer, has an entry for manstress. And it is exactly what we describe, a male version of a mistress.
Keeping a manstress on the side.
Keeping a manstress on the side. Would you be a manstress?
I would not be a manstress. Only platonically.
Boring.
Sorry.
Platonic manstress.
I know.
It's all the bad things and none of the good things.
Sorry, that's all I can do.
Well, good. I'm glad we've worked that out. And I brought a word of the week to you.
I like it.
What are we going to be played out on, Daniel?
Why don't we go unrecognizable and try Echo and the Bunnymen with Do You Know Who I Am?
Well, this show has given me motivation, Daniel, to go out and reinvigorate my language learning because there's benefits.
I'm glad to hear that. I'll see you next time.
Toodaloo.
Echo and the Bunnymen there on RTR FM 92.1 with Don't You Know Who I Am? And you're here with us for the tail end of Talk the Talk. That was a chat I had recently with Ben Ainsley about bilingualism, but now we're coming at you from Studio A of RTR FM headquarters Mount Lawley. I'm here with Rhiannon Todd-Hunter.
Hello again.
So has that firmed your resolve to learn a language?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I get motivation and I go with it for about a month and then
It's going to take
slowly peter off and do something
It's going to take
else.
longer than a month, you know.
I know.
We got
I
a
know
phone,
it does.
We got a phone call from David.
Who kind of disrupted the manstress plans.
Okay, well, manstress is a great word, but he points out that it ends in stress, which, you know, the S ending, which is in words like waitress and stewardess and is marked for female.
Yeah.
So if you've got a manstress, well, you know, it's kind of a gender ambiguous thing. So what do we do?
What do we do? What's the solution
I
for this?
don't know. I thought of the male version, the male variant of stress, which is stir, you know, like instead of a hipstress, you've got a hipster, right?
Sure.
That's marked for male. So you could have a manster.
Possibly if you have a better suggestion as to what the male equivalent of a mistress, well, the third member in an extramarital affair is, you could let us know.
Yes, please. Hit us up on Twitter. We're at TalkRTR, or our Facebook page. That's lots of fun, too. Speaking of Twitter, we got a tweet from the Grand Poobah Wagtail, at Angry Wagtails. Don't make them angry. They're
I couldn't actually imagine anything cuter.
I know. That's why they're so angry. They have such trouble being taken seriously.
Aw.
Who points out the Teara website for its 404 message. You know when you go to a website and you can't find the page just isn't there.
Not found.
Not found. Well, this one, when you go there, it says, oh no, the page you're looking for has gone up the boohai.
What's a boohai?
Boohai,
Daniel?
up the boohai means lost, completely gone missing. It's a Maori word. And I am told that when I look up the definition here, it comes from the remote township of Puhoi in New Zealand. Thoroughly remote. You've gone up the Puhai. So, 10 out of 10 for massive Maoriness. I got something to show you. I want to show you this. You've got my phone here.
You've given me your phone.
There's been a development in the world of language technology.
And I've seen this before on the internet, but I've never had a chance to actually do it.
Now, the app that you've got there is Google's Translate program.
Yeah.
And they've improved it because they've rolled in WordLens. WordLens is an awesome piece of software. You point your phone's camera at a thing and it translates for you. So I've got on my computer a document that says, where is the library? ? And
Even just seeing that in English, I know what's going to happen.
Go ahead. So you're holding my phone at it. What's it doing?
It's donde es la... biblioteca. It changed.
Okay, now so instead of seeing the English words on my computer, you're seeing Spanish words.
Yeah. And it was translating, like, it took me a minute for it to flick from library over to biblioteca, so it's just translating in real time. And I'm so excited about this, actually.
You're walking around someplace?
Yeah.
And you point your phone at some foreign message, and it translates it for you. We're living in the future.
Yep.
So
well, we're living in the present, and I think that's just as good.
That's good, too. The Google's Translate app is available for Android and iDevices, and you can download it for free and freak yourself out. You can, if you don't speak another language, you can also just have it display the same words backwards. That's fun. It's got a number of different testy things that it can do. Are you a Spanish speaker person?
Me?
Yes, you.
No.
Not one of your...
No, that was just from Community. I just knew that from Community.
Oh, okay. Very good. If I say mondegreen, does that mean anything to you?
I know what it implies. I know what it is. What does it mean in Spanish?
Oh, no. It's
nothing?
I don't think it means anything in Spanish, but in English, you know what it is. Tell me about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is mistaken words, so words that you hear as a song lyric or, as a spoken word, or it's read differently or translated differently, and it becomes different. So it's generally used a lot in lyrics in songs.
Are there any that you've had?
Yeah, the one that I always used to get wrong when I was quite young was the Go-Go song, and I always thought it said Alex the Seal. It is actually Our Lips Are Sealed.
Alex the Seal.
It took me a long time.
That's a famous one. What else?
To get through the Jimi Hendrix song Purple Haze, Excuse Me While I Kiss This Guy.
Yep. I had a friend who went to Jamaica for a while, and he said he was talking to some people. He said, "What kind of music is popular around here?" And they said, "Oh, the most popular song around now is this is in the '90s, by the way, is King Justice." And he was like, "King Justice? I can't think of it. How does it go?" "Oh, you know, dun 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 dun, dun King Justice." Dun, dun, you know, so that was a funny mondegreen. Well, listener Jay has emailed talkthetalk@rtrfm.com.au, and this is a bit of Spanish radio in the Dominican Republic. Somebody requested a song, and the song was he didn't know the title. He thought the title was "Are those Reeboks or Nikes?" Estos son Reebok o son Nike? Have you got it? Can you figure out what song it is? Let's hear how this went down. Eventually, the DJ got it. This is very quick. Let's just hear it.
Sí, yo quiero que tú me pongas la canción que dice, ¿esos son Reebok o son Nike?
¿Esos son Reebok o son Nike?
Sí, sí.
Pero, ¿cómo se llama? ¿Cómo se llama?
¿Son Reebok o son Nike?
¿Esos son Reebok o son Nike?
Have you got it?
No.
A ver, compláceme, que me gusta mucho esa canción. Está muy pegada esa canción.
¿Esos son Reebok o son Nike? ¿Será esta, brother? ¿Será esta?
Esa misma, bre, esa misma es. Esa es.
Yep.
Cuídate, mi hermano.
That's the one.
That's beautiful.
So thanks to listener Jay
Well done.
for pointing us out on that one.
I found another one that when I was doing some research earlier today,
What's
that
that?
I thought was wonderful, and I told you about it just off air. The Edith Piaf song and movie La Vie en Rose that has been misheard as La Vie en Rose, which translates, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but as the pink aeroplane.
I would listen to a song called The Pink Airplane.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're at the back end of this episode of Talk the Talk. Thank you, Rianne, for coming on. and
Oh,
being
pleasure,
with me.
Daniel. Anytime.
If you want to find links to all the stuff we've talked about, you can find it on our blog, www.talkthetalkpodcast.com. There's a post for every episode, and you can leave comments. You can also leave us some comments on our Facebook page. We like it when you like us. And we will see you next week.
Adam's coming up with Out to Lunch, and Chelsea's up with the news in just a moment.
This has been an RTRFM podcast. RTRFM is an independent community radio station that relies on listeners for financial support. You can subscribe online at rtrfm.com.au/subscribe.
You can also subscribe to Talk the Talk on iTunes and even leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at TalkRTR. Email us on talkthetalk@rtrfm.com.au. And find all our episodes on our blog, www.talkthetalkpodcast.com. I hardly ever get recognized. Actually, I do sometimes get recognized.
Once or twice, but it's a voice thing.
It's a voice thing.
It's not a face thing.
Yeah.
Mostly people come up to me like, you sound really annoying.
Yeah, you must be that Ben Ainsley guy.
I feel like I know you from... you're the guy.
Be cranky at me.
Yes.